The age-old image of Canadians being the friendliest people on the planet is quickly fading, and this Toronto Star advice column inadvertently shows that the people of Toronto are dickheads. Ladies and gents, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Clyde. Welcome to the show. The YouTube algorithm has been pointing out that many of you are watching the channel that aren't subscribed. So hit that subscribe button down below. Let's get into this. The demographics in Canada and the culture have been changing enormously over this past several decades, and namely, the attitudes that Canadians have. In fact, COVID was probably the culprit that brought out the worst in people, and I would say that the worst in people is just essentially their true selves. They're just given a opportunity to show themselves tremendously. And leave a comment in the comment section down below if you have any insight on how bad people's behavior is in Canada. But well, here's a comedian. Here's comedian Rob Bebenek saying just how much of this is the case.
We are not the nice ones in our relationship with our neighbors to the south, right? Everyone thinks around the world, oh, Canadians are so nice, Americans are awful. That's not the way it is. You ever ask an American what they think of a Canadian? George's just like, oh, they're so great, they're just great little people. Up there with their cute hats, they're awesome, I love them so much. You ever ask a Canadian what they think of an American?
Much different story right there.
What about you guys? You got anything nice to say?
Now, the joke really reigns true because Canadians know this, that Canadians are the vitriol that goes towards Americans is tremendous indeed, and largely unjustified. I mean, that word unjustified has been going around quite a bit. But as a dual citizen of Canada and the United States, living in Canada, every time it's become known that I'm an American citizen, I've seen the other side of that one. So leave a comment if you've experienced that down below. Let's get into this article. So this is from the Toronto Star. This is somebody calling in for advice, actually, at the Toronto Star and saying, I moved to Toronto from Arizona. No one even nods or waves at each other. Is Toronto the least friendly city on earth? And let's hear the response. This is great. So this is by Lizzie Tesher. She's an advice columnist for the Toronto Star. She gives her advice to people as, and you'll just hear what that is. What is the protocol? So this is the person writing in, is moved from Arizona, who's just looking for advice on how to behave with other human beings in the city of Toronto. Because, well, let's be honest, Arizona, we've all heard of Southern hospitality. I was just down in Texas recently. It is very much a real thing. So let's hear what the question is. What is the protocol when moving to a new neighborhood as far as relationships with neighbors? I just moved here from Arizona and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to behave. At home, we rarely see our neighbors. We drive everywhere we need to go and maybe only see people when we're walking the dog or mowing the lawn. A wave usually suffices. But here, I see people walk straight past each other without even a nod, or see complete strangers stop to chat. It's very confusing. What is your take on the situation? Please give us some advice on why is it that Torontonians seem very rude? I don't know. Are they really? Well, let's listen to the advice here. Answer: I can only assume you mean Toronto when you say here. Now, I love this because you wrote the Toronto Star. Why do you have to? This is the beginning of the condescension in the article right here. I'll just make the assumption that you meant this, and I'll point it out and just be a complete you fill in the blank there. And I don't know what neighborhood you moved into. Ironically, when we moved into our home a few years ago, I distinctly remember one neighbor popping out to welcome us and how friendly our street was. It was only November, and we never saw another human being until spring. Now, this is, I'm guessing, somebody who's never stepped foot outside of Toronto or Canada at large. Go somewhere else in the world and you'll just see how friendly people actually are. I would like to point that out. My point is, Torontonians are very weather affected. So let's make excuses for them, and let's make excuses for the behavior. It's about the weather, right? Actually, leave a comment about this in the comment section down below. But as far as I remember growing up in Canada, weather was that thing that connected us. We would always talk about the weather. That was a thing. You could always break the ice by talking about the weather to another Canadian, and that was always a thing. You go into a coffee shop, hey, what do you think of that weather? And a conversation sparks up, but it doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. We're weather affected. That's why we don't speak to each other. That's what's being implicated here. If you're out walking in the winter or any unpleasant weather for that matter, which is pretty much, if you've ever been to Toronto, that's all the weather. It's either too cold or it's too hot and humid and bugs and you name it. It's just so it's always horrible. The attitudes are terrible in Toronto. You can expect heads down and no friendly exchanges. My experience has been one that when the sun comes out, people stop looking down and they start looking up, literally and figuratively, probably to swat the flies and all the other stuff away. And most people say hi when they pass you on the street. Having said that, I'm just a friendly person and I say hi to everyone, so they may just be responding. You say hi and then you make wild assumptions about what they're saying, or condescension, as in saying, I'll only assume you meant Toronto when you said here, writing to the Toronto Star. But this is the reality of the situation. If you want to find out about Toronto, learn a little bit more about Toronto and the way people interact with each other, here's a great one from Channel 5 Clips asking about what Toronto slang is like.
Can you teach us some basic rudimentary Toronto slang?
Nice it, basically shut the up, you feel me? Nice your beak, like you're too annoying. Wagwan, what's up? Buck tea, you feel me? Like a homeless person lurking around. You got balling up rules.
The spliff is Aita, don't even pass it to me.
And that means there's no grab on the spliff, and that's rough. If you don't smoke with grabba, you don't feel the tump.
Sounds pleasant. Sounds totally pleasant. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Toronto is becoming one of those cities where it's known. I mean, New York has always been one of those places where you get people shouting at you. That's always the stereotype of it. But there's always been this like underlying a love for New York and a love for the way the culture is there. Toronto seems to be a completely different story in this case. People just avoid Toronto like the plague, and maybe it's because of situations like this. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Is the reputation of Canadians diminished over the years? Or do you think it's still pretty good? It depends. If you've been to any metropolitan areas in recent times, I'd love to hear what your opinion is on that. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.